What's cracking and show me Mr. Criminal? Shout out to everybody out there liking these reactions, tapping in, hitting us with a comment, like, and subscribe. Keep on liking and subscribing to this content, and we're going to keep bringing you these reactions. So today we are reacting to Russia getting involved in this war. Now, it seems that a lot of people are not really feeling America's threats. America keeps saying that they're going to make it rain hell. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. And the deadline is tomorrow. So it's been said that Russia is on the sidelines waiting to see what's going on. And if America hits them with the nuclear bomb, which they're saying they're going to raise hell, they're going to be living in hell, they're going to rain fire. A lot of people are interpreting that as being a threat of nuclear war. So let's go ahead and react to Russia jumping in.
The war between the United States and Iran threatens to spiral out of control. There's a stark warning coming straight from Russia. The Kremlin has reacted to escalating threats and ultimatums by U.S. President Donald Trump against Iran, saying tensions in the Middle East are reaching a dangerous tipping point. In a statement published by the Times of Israel, Moscow warned that the entire West Asia is effectively, quote, on fire, unquote. Separately, the Kremlin spokesperson on April 6th warned that the conflict between Iran, the U.S., and Israel has been spreading, and the world has been witnessing the consequences, while referring to the partial blockade of the global oil artery, the Strait of Hormuz.
A question regarding...
Because the world could sit back and not get involved only so long. When America, when Israel, when Iran, when anybody for that matter, start threatening nuclear attacks, or even if they don't say it, but they just allude to it by saying like, I'm going to rain hell on you guys, I'm going to rain fire, that's like a different level of threat. So that's when other countries start poking their head in.
Yesterday's statement by President Trump concerning Iran, in which he, using rather unprintable language, demanded that Iran open the Strait of Hormuz or else face utter hell and prepare for a day of destruction for its power plants and bridges. Has the Kremlin seen these particular statements, and how might it comment on them?
We've seen these statements, prefer not to comment on them. We know that the level of tension in the region is growing, continues to grow. Practically the entire region is now on fire. These are all extremely dangerous and very negative consequences of the aggression that was unleashed against Iran. The geography of this conflict has expanded.
What else can a country do when they keep threatening them? When they keep threatening everything to be blown up within 24 hours?
Now we all acknowledge the consequences we face, including very negative impacts on the global economy. We, in fact, from the very outset, even prior to the commencement of any military operations, we had been warning that such repercussions were absolutely inevitable.
Behind the scenes, diplomatic activity is intensifying. Top officials from Russia and China, both allies of Iran, have held urgent talks, focusing on the rapidly deteriorating situation in West Asia.
See, Russia and China are just chilling, just waiting for that call. Waiting for that call. Iran calls these dudes, it's a wrap. We're really going to be in World War III. And that's to say hell will be rained upon all of us.
Asia. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov called for a more balanced and objective global response to the escalating tensions between Iran, the U.S., and Israel. Their message is clear: the fighting must stop. and Lavrov has reportedly warned that military operations must cease immediately, while Beijing has pushed for a ceasefire as the only way to stabilize critical flashpoints, including the Strait of Hormuz. Adding a new layer of complexity, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made a serious allegation, claiming Russia provided intelligence support to Iran to strike more than 50 Israeli energy sites. Moscow, however, has not officially responded to these claims. From Moscow...
And that's the next threat. They said that they're going to bomb all of their power. Now that's what you call debatably a war crime. Going after civilian infrastructure is considered a war crime. But Trump ain't hearing that.
Moscow's warning to Beijing's diplomacy and accusations of covert support. This is no longer just a regional conflict. It's a geopolitical crisis pulling in global powers. The question now is, can diplomacy cool a region already on fire?
Kind of process. And I believe the day before yesterday, President Trump mentioned that as soon as we end the hostilities, and he says that almost all the goals are accomplished, then right away the navigation in the Strait of Hormuz will go back to normalcy. So it means that you don't need to demand anything from Iran. You need to put an end to hostilities, and then the strait would go back.
Speaking in Moscow,
they haven't opened that strait in weeks. Now, Iran is not only attacking American infrastructure, it was said that they sent missiles towards Kuwait and injured 15 U.S. military soldiers last night. But they're hitting the pockets of the world to make the world feel it. Close the strait, slow down oil, slow down all imports of food and everything, and the world will feel it.
after high-level talks with Egypt, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov delivered a sharp message on the spiraling U.S.-Iran conflict, urging an immediate halt to hostilities and a decisive shift back to diplomacy. Addressing reporters alongside Egypt's foreign minister, Badr Abdelhadi, Lavrov said both Russia and Egypt were aligned in their view that the escalating confrontation triggered by U.S. and Israeli military action against Iran had pushed the region to a dangerous tipping point. He described the current situation as one of the most severe crises in recent memory and warned that continued strikes risk dragging the wider Middle East into prolonged instability. Lavrov.
This is the most, I would say, the most resistance U.S. has ever faced in my lifetime. Throughout everything, when they were going after Iraq, it was just strategic bombings and strategic military campaigns to take over the country, and they took it over. And they probably prolonged it and this and that, but you didn't hear it being met with such opposition to where it was kept on halting. You never heard the president keep making threats time and time again, making threats, setting new deadlines. Same thing with Afghanistan. I think this is a country that Trump knows it's going to take a lot for him to conquer, if he could even conquer it.
Lavrov took aim at recent remarks by U.S. President Donald Trump, particularly calls for Tehran to restore normal shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. According to Lavrov, it was unrealistic for Washington to demand guarantees on maritime traffic while simultaneously continuing military operations. He argued that a restoration of stability in the Gulf would come not through ultimatums, but through de-escalation and negotiations. The Russian minister said his country and Egypt had agreed to deepen coordination at the United Nations and other multilateral platforms to push for a diplomatic resolution. He emphasized that any solution must account for the security concerns of all regional states, naming Gulf Arab nations, Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iran as stakeholders whose stability is intertwined. Abdullati echoed these sentiments, noting Egypt's long-standing position that regional crises cannot be solved through force alone and require sustained political engagement. Lavrov also lamented that the renewed fighting had pushed the Israeli-Palestinian issue out of international focus.
They're straight mopping it up out there. Look at all that destruction. Look at all that damage that they don't show on the news ever when it comes to Israel.
Stressed that the fragile ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, brokered in October 2025 with significant Egyptian mediation, must be preserved and strengthened rather than overshadowed by the Gulf conflict. Ignoring that front, he warned, would only compound instability across the region.
That is according to Israeli media. The residential structure partially collapsed after the attack on Sunday. At least 4 others have been wounded. And we did mention earlier in the program that sites in and around Tel Aviv were also attacked. Nida Ibrahim is following those developments in Israel from Ramallah in the occupied.
Israel getting smashed. People will start taking notice when that comes to our front doorstep. If Los Angeles or New York or one of these cities, Chicago, starts getting hit, that's when we'll start paying much attention. But for now, everybody's stuck on social media and stuck on living life. This is just headlines to people until it hits your front door.
West Bank. Nida, after more than 5 weeks of war, can you give us an overall picture of how much damage Iran has actually done in Israel?
Well, the main issue that remains concerning to Israelis is that extensive damage to buildings, to homes. These continued strikes from Iran are causing people to be in shelters, in fortified areas, but that does not mean that they won't get targeted or hit by these Iranian missiles when we talk.
And they won't show any of this on our news. You notice how they don't show anything about Israel being attacked at all. And where the hell is the Netanyahu? Where the hell is he? It's like Israel started this war and just went silent, letting Trump in America take care of the rest.
About Haifa, there was a failure to intercept this missile, although it has been detected and several intercepting missiles tried to stop it from attacking this building, but indeed it still did that. When we talk about the south of the country, near Dimona, which is where the nuclear Israeli facility is, they've seen major damage several times, one time causing damage to hundreds of homes, causing people to be displaced. But also we're talking about another hit yesterday that hit a factory, the 3rd time since this version of this battle started between Israel, the US and Iran.
Israel's not showing none of the reality of what's hitting their country. This is going to show that their Iron Dome isn't working. It's not effective. Iranian rockets are making it right through.
Need to remember that these hits are sometimes affecting strategic assets inside Israel, but because of the tough and strict military censorship, we know little about what happens there.
Tough and strict military censorship.
Because this is part of the war Israel is trying to wage, a psychological aspect to try and keep the population supporting this war. And in the beginning, we were reporting of this high support of this war, amounting to almost 80% of people saying in polls that they support this war. This is something that they see as an existential threat. But as the war goes on and as these war goals that Netanyahu has promised his people are not being achieved, it's taking much longer than had been anticipated. And that's the ultimate fear for many Israelis, a war of attrition. They know that Iran can stand for a long time. It has prepared itself for a long war. But can the Israelis handle that? We have calls from certain opposition leaders saying that education needs to go back, that they need to try and resort some normalcy so people can go on with their lives despite these continued strikes.
That's the sad thing. Life keeps going. Life goes on. While these people, the heads of state, create wars and panic all throughout the countries, all throughout the world, life has to keep going. Life has to keep lifing. People have to go to school, work, all along while they're making their agenda, and furthering it towards a end goal. And what's their end goal? I'll let you figure that out.
It's really interesting what you bring up about the support for the war, which isn't as high today, 5 weeks in, as it was at the very beginning. You were mentioning 80% support for the war in Israel. That was 5 weeks ago. But since then, as you also reported, people have been going in and out of their shelters and their bunkers as missiles rain down on Israel. And it's more than that. I understand that some people are now living in those shelters rather than just occasionally going into them. So I don't know if it's possible to measure the patience that Israelis might still have with this war. But what are the indications in terms of, how much of a runway they're willing to give their government to continue this war?
Well,
That's the craziest thing. A lot of it is based on public opinion. And as long as they censor the war and they keep manipulating the media, it will definitely be overwhelming for them to support the war because Iran is painted a certain way.
well, that's the tough question. How long can they handle? And we know that when protests have happened during the Gaza war, Netanyahu paid little attention to the streets' anger, the streets' calls for him to end the war sooner than he did. But this time, we're also seeing a similar wave of more Israelis feeling, are we waging a war because Netanyahu wants to win the next elections? We know that.
Look at that. That's a good question. Is this a war just because Netanyahu with the elections? Or is this deeper than that?
His government is one of the few in the history of Israel to complete its full term, and we expect it to hand over power when the elections take place later this year. But Netanyahu is not ready to give up just yet. He wants to win these seats, and he also wants to avoid his corruption trial. So he's pushing for a continuation of the war, saying he has more bank of targets, he has more strikes to do in Iran, and that he did not give up on the main goal of changing the regime. But that did not get achieved. And Israelis find themselves going to shelters, as you say, sometimes living in them because of the continued sirens blasting, not just from Iran, but also from Hezbollah, which, according to Israeli army officials, they've been underestimating the power of Hezbollah. So that's a very sensitive issue. And there are more Israelis who believe that they are waging a war to help Netanyahu's standing. And that is not sitting very well with many of them.
Nida Ibrahim.
Man, isn't that something? Something to make you think. This is a war based on political agendas that go farther, and deeper than what we think. That's guaranteed. Trump's over there threatening with nuclear weapons, saying, praise be to Allah, trolling them. It's crazy. Netanyahu's probably not even alive anymore. Israel censoring the whole war. Russia's getting ready to jump in it. It's a lot of different moving parts in this. And this is a fact that the whole Middle East is on fire eventually. And this fire could spread to different borders, and it could become a world war. This could become World War III. Like it or love it, man. Hate it or love it, I should say. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think, man. This is crazy. It's definitely spiraling out of control. Trump says it's 48 hours, and it's only until tomorrow until that happens. What's going to happen? Are they going to hit him with a nuke? Are they going to just completely bomb all their civilian infrastructure? Is Trump going to go down in history as the president that put his finger on the button? It's a lot to decipher here, man. With that being said, take care of your families. Keep God first. Stay prayed up. It's your homeboy, Mr. Criminal, and I'm out.